Oh, thank you, Dega. Okay, let's talk about these fears we've got here. Afraid of being poor. Afraid of getting your heart broken again. Afraid of being alone and never meeting your soulmate. Afraid of being judged negatively. Afraid of never being good enough. Afraid of never achieving my dreams. Afraid of abandonment, not being able to break out of bad habits to focus on the path to joy. Afraid of sexual assault and trusting anyone with my personal self. Fear for the inevitability of death, pain, and becoming homeless. Afraid of being oppressed. So the ones I wrote down are afraid of physical violence, afraid of being alone or misunderstood, and left out. Those are the main fears that I could think of. Thank you, Tara. Have a good day at work. So what is fear? Fear is a messenger. Fear tells us, hey, there is danger. You need to be careful. Fear lets us know in its healthy state that we are entering into a space or a location or a time or some kind of situation that requires a higher awareness, that requires a focus of what we're going through. Fear can be rational or it can be irrational. And we're going to talk more about this word irrational. This has to do with shadow work. This has to do with the things that Kuan Yin has taught me. Again, if you feel like no matter what you do, you keep getting triggered, you still have this darker side of yourself that you can't seem to access, that you're afraid to access, I recommend working with Kuan Yin, my friend. She's on Instagram. And she has a program called Catharsis, which is similar to my Create Your Dream Life program, but it's all about the shadow self. So Kuan Yin and I have worked together extensively, a lot. She's taught me so much. She's someone who has explored these darker realms and someone who has really been brave in going into and uncovering the healthy and bringing light into the darkness. So when we talk about irrational fears, we belittle them. We say that they are not important. We say that they're wrong. But we have to trust our bodies and we have to trust our minds to tell us that it's telling us something. Maybe you're being triggered to be afraid of something that, thank you, Troy. Maybe you're being triggered by something that doesn't appear to be that scary. I can't think of an example, but let's say that someone does something or says something and you respond in a way that doesn't make sense. You freak out. And this is what we call a trigger. You freak out, it seems like an overreaction, it seems irrational. It's actually not irrational because what you're responding to is something that happened in your past. You're responding to a trigger in your mind. You're responding to programming that has happened in your brain at an earlier time. So let's say that you had someone in your family who sexually abused you, and they always wore a certain scent, perfume or cologne, right? Let's say that you smell that cologne or that perfume and you get triggered and you freak out. Let's say you're going on a date with someone and they wear that cologne or that perfume and you freak out and you irrationally have anxiety, have all these things. And you're like, I don't know why I freaked out, because this might be deep in your mind. You might not even know what you're associating. And it can be, you can end up belittling yourself and furthering the trauma that you experienced. A lot of times these triggers go back to times when we were not supported, when we were traumatized, when we were abused in some way, where we were not respected, where our autonomy was not given to us. When we're kids, a lot of times older people, parents and stuff, they take more power without giving respect to children. So by taking away your power as a child and raising you in that way, that's literally how your brain becomes programmed. When you feel a trigger that you feel is irrational or misaligned, ask yourself, when was the first time I felt this way? Usually you can trace it back to an original piece of trauma, an original piece of programming that goes back to your childhood. Some fear is rational. Some fear makes sense. Some fear you say, wow, that is a scary person and I don't want to be near them. And it's a messenger. Something that I think that most people in our culture have experienced is a low-level, constant fear, otherwise called as anxiety. I used to have anxiety so much all the time that when I was prescribed anti-anxiety medication, I would take it and I would feel energized. And I asked my doctor, I said, why do I feel energized when I'm supposed to feel tired on this medication? And they said it was because I was so exhausted all the time from having so much anxiety. My body was being drained because of all the fear that I was in. So that when I took anti-anxiety medication and that anxiety disappeared, I actually had more energy even though I was still being sedated by the drug. Anti-anxiety medication wasn't the answer for me. Something that really did help was chamomile tea and chamomile tinctures. Chamomile works faster and stronger and more directly than any anti-anxiety medication I've ever tried. Getting to the root of anxiety to heal it for good is where we really want to be. But using the gentle flower of chamomile, I can't recommend enough. So anxiety is this low-level fear that's constant, that you're worried all the time about a variety of things. Maybe you're worried about people not liking you. You're worried about coming across in a social situation wrong. You're worried about the way that you dress. You're worried about different things. You might be overwhelmed or overcome with strange assumptions of things that you're afraid of doing. Anxiety is a feeling of disempowerment. And it took me a long time to understand this. Because we think of anxiety as this thing that just happens to us all the time. And it just seems like that's how it is, and it's in our bodies and we can't do anything against it, but that's not true. Anxiety exists in our culture because we're in a toxic society. But additionally, the root of anxiety isn't fear necessarily, but it's disempowerment. And it's also the repression of our true desires. When you feel anxious, there is a key for every anxiety that you have. For me, that key was, Unicole, you're going to figure it out. Whenever I would hear that or say that to myself, really embody that feeling of I'm going to figure it out, my anxiety would melt away because I had to be empowered in that specific way. If you can find what the source of your anxiety is and the antidote, you say to yourself, you are unconditionally loved. You say, you are safe. You say everything is okay. You say this is only temporary. Whatever it is that empowers you again to feel safe in your reality, to feel like you have power, to feel like you have control in your life, in your situation, that you're protected. Start repeating those mantras in your head rather than the ones that are causing the anxiety. Going back to the repression of fear, goes back to the irrational energy of fear. If we are triggered by something and we can't figure out why we're triggered, we say, I don't know why I'm overreacting. I'm an idiot. And we shove down our emotion and we don't validate it. The more we do not listen to these messengers, fear is a messenger. It's like an alarm. You're literally snoozing the alarm, and it's one of those alarms that just gets louder every time. Your fear is asking you to feel it, to look at it, to understand it, and to address it. It's asking for the antidote. It's like a little child. Whenever you got triggered, the original trigger, the original trauma, that is a snapshot of the root of your fear. So if you can find that child self and you can tell them the antidote, I am not going to be around people like the person who hurt you. I am going to protect you from the people who have hurt you. I am always going to stand up for you in ways you were never stood up for as a child. Those kinds of things. The more conversations you can have with that snapshot of fear, that snapshot in time, the more you will get a good root of overcoming your fear. When you feel fear, you can validate it. This is the opposite of what we think we should do. We think to overcome fear means to just ignore it. There's that cheesy, Instagram, poster, whatever. Fear isn't, or courage isn't the absence of fear. It's going on despite it, right? So validating your fear, listening to it, saying this is a valid feeling. Everyone has fear to some degree. And it's okay that I feel afraid of this, and I want to know what it is trying to tell me. Some people said they're afraid of being alone. Things like this are conceptual, theoretical, philosophical ideas about your life. I sometimes get very afraid that I'm in an afterlife that is, designed just for me to grow. And I think the antidote to fears like that is trust in the divine. If you end up getting your heart broken again, you learn so much from that. You learn how to be compassionate. You learn how to work through these things. You learn how to not treat other people the way you've been treated. You learn how to set your standards, to interact with people who are going to respect you no matter what happens in the relationship. You guys, CBT and CBD. Take a bunch of CBD and go to do your CBT. Yes. And Delicious Club Soda said the meds are very addictive. It's true. You start to go off of them and you get panic attacks. This is a addiction in your brain. It's not because you have panic attacks all the time without your meds. Meds usually are so influential on the brain that if you stop taking them, you'll have horrible side effects, terrible moods, panic attacks, crying constantly, whatever. And that is not a reflection of how you would be healthfully off the medication. I just want to emphasize that that was something that was confusing for me when I was on a lot of medication, and I said, well, I want to see just what I'm like without it. And then I would stop taking it and I would be a wreck. But that's because you're literally addicted to the chemicals in the drugs. In order to get off of your medication, they recommend you get off it really quickly, and I think that is also very dangerous. These are highly influential chemicals on your brain. It's a strong, powerful drug, and it's really intense to get off it quickly. I recommend going off your medication if that's something you decide to do. Talk to your doctor, etc., and go off of it very, very, very slowly. Break the medication up into smaller and smaller amounts. Use a scale, recapsule them. Even smaller increments than just breaking it in half, like very, very, very small increments over at least 3 months. 6 months would be ideal. I had extreme side effects from going off my medications in that way, even for years. I think I still have side effects. I think I'm permanently affected by the medications that I was on. Finding that divine trust, finding the divine protection, finding the understanding that everything that you experience is for your highest good can alleviate a lot of fear. I met this interesting man. What's his name? Todd, I think. He messaged me about a concept that he has he has copyright on, called ghost people. And this is something that he said is a process where someone who is faced with death or faced with something that is absolutely terrifying, normally they run from it. Most people, everybody. Your brain is designed in a way so that when you see something really scary, you run away from it. But when you stand up to it and you accept your fate, your death, whatever, when you break your natural reaction. Your natural reaction would be to run away, and if you with your spirit override the body, it breaks, this is what he said, it breaks your amygdala, which is your fear center, and then you no longer have the same type of fear ever again. He said you can do this with scary movies. You don't have to necessarily do this in a lot of ways. He said this is something that they used to do in ancient cultures. They would put the kids, 100 yards outside of camp and say, you have to spend the night here. And this is how you become, indoctrinated into our society. And they overcome their fear in the dark outside, 100 yards away from camp. And their brain is different. The benefits of this that this gentleman said was, he had some weird, he said forgetting to drink water and eat was one of them. I don't know if that's truly related. Higher sex drive. Some interesting things I'm not sure I agree with. But one thing is like a higher awareness, a higher understanding of reality. It's sort of like a brain hack. Obviously, this is something that I have done. I tried to kill myself. I was not half-assing it. I embraced it. I said, I am going to do this. I am overcoming my fear in this way. I was definitely afraid of it at first. And then I said, nope, I'm not going to be afraid. I'm going to face it and I'm going to do it. I'm not recommending that anybody does this or tries this. There are lots of ways to overcome your fear, to face them full on. And when you do this, when you go through this transformation of being brave and facing your fears and going straight into what you're afraid of, because hopefully it's because you know that you're not really going to get hurt, or you're evaluating the risk versus the reward. The more that you are brave in situations that are safe, physically, maybe psychologically scary, the more you'll be preparing your brain to be empowered and strong. Because when you listen to your fear, you feed your fear. And when you overcome it, you train your mind to expect a higher reality. Think about something that you did that was scary. And then think about how it was easier the second time. And how it was easier the third time. Until you faced that fear so many times that it was no longer scary to you anymore. Probably it could be fun at that point. Fear a lot of times is a question of risk versus reward. It's the idea of going into something and saying, well, I might lose XYZ, but I might gain XYZ. If you're afraid of getting your heart broken and you don't ever go on any more dates because of that, then you're not getting the risk, but you're also not getting the reward of being in the relationship, of having someone be close with you. You're protected from having your heart broken, but you also never got to be in a relationship. Fear is a messenger that tells you important information, always, even if it seems irrational, even if it seems overwhelming, even if it seems overpowering, even if it seems subtle. Fear, anxiety, these are always telling you important information. It's up to you to listen to this information, to say, where is the root of this? When is the first time I felt this feeling, this exact feeling? In what ways is this messenger truly protecting me? In what ways is this messenger hindering me? How can I listen to this messenger while making an informed decision about my life? How can I listen to this messenger while taking risks that might make my situation better? How can I listen to this messenger and help it if I feel like it's not relevant? Most rewards in life come from very scary things. As a pop star cult leader, I've had to get over my fear of standing out, my fear of being weird, my fear of being crazy, my fear of being called crazy, my fear of talking to strangers, my fear of standing out with my clothing, my fear of getting attention, my fear of singing in public, my fear of being made fun of, my fear of being left out, my fear of ostracizing myself so that people don't want to hang out with me or date me because I'm too weird. My fear of sharing too much, my fear of sharing at all. My fear of devoting myself to something that might not pay off. All of these things have been significant fears that could have easily prevented me from doing any of this. But I took the risks. Every day I take the risks. Because I want something different for my life. I want something different for the world. And so, There are times when I got dressed up and my heart was pounding and I was sweating and I was hyperventilating and I walked through the streets wearing clothes that were rainbow, and it was scary. And there are times that I posted videos with my palms sweating, clicking the post button, and it was scary. There are times I turned the camera on and I couldn't even speak because my heart was pounding. But every day I did it. And I overcame my fear and I showed up. And I did it 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. Eventually, it wasn't scary anymore. Now, I wear rainbow clothes and people are looking at me and they're like, who are you? And I'm like, what? I'm just myself. And I'm not scared anymore. I'm not freaked out. I'm not upset. I'm not worried. I'm just free. Because fear was trying to keep me in a box. Fear was trying to keep me down. Fear was trying to keep me from being my true self. Fear was trying to prevent me from reaching you with my message. Fear was trying to stop me from being different. Fear was trying to prevent me from doing anything that might ruin my career as a tech person. Fear was trying to stop me from being too weird so that I would still be accepted. Fear was trying to stop me from being my true self. Fear was trying to stop me from doing something different. Fear was trying to stop me from changing the world. But I didn't listen. And I didn't just quiet it once. I quieted it thousands of times by listening to it, acknowledging it, and saying, thank you for your message, but I'm going to do something different. I'm going to take the risk. Now I laugh at scary movies. So I'm not a very good Halloween date. I laugh at the face of physical violence. I'm not afraid of anything anymore. Because I have listened to my fear and I have stood up for what I know to be true so many times that I know that nothing can hurt me. I am fully empowered. I no longer have anxiety because that disempowerment, that voice of saying, what if, oh, I don't know, what if this, oh, what if that, oh, what if you do something wrong, then this. I say, no. I'm in control in this situation. I know how to handle this. Through experience, through divine protection, through divine trust. I know how to handle this. What did you do that people do to expect you? I don't know what that means. I hope that this sermon helped you. Wherever you're at is beautiful and important. This is a years-long journey. This is something that has taken me years of constant, dedicated focus and effort. Give yourself love wherever you're at. So, did I use magic along the way? Yes, but my magic was more about producing physical results. I don't use too much magic on other people's perception of me because I just tell it like it is. And I could glamorize myself and filter myself through certain ways of being so that people could understand me more. That would be a form of magic. I could pretend to be a version of myself that is more close to a representation that you have all seen many times so that you can understand me better. But that's exhausting to me. And I would rather just be who I really am and speak my truth, and you figure out what I'm saying. I'm not going to hold your hand in understanding me. So my magic hasn't been about that. And that's, that's been a source of my fear, but also a source of, my risk-averse reward is like, I have to be authentic. When I do magic, it's more about producing physical results, usually money or, creating beneficial things for Unicult. So they're usually not too closely connected to my fears except lack. I will do money spells and lack, and feelings of lack. I hope you all have a beautiful, wonderful, powerful Sunday and a good day off tomorrow if you get to have the day off tomorrow. Please enjoy the vibes and the sunshine today. The sun is charged with a certain frequency today that is very important and very special to feel. Thank you. Uni bless. Oh, Spirit of Uni, we ask you to bless all the viewers, to have them have a wonderful day, to carry this message throughout the world so that it can ripple out into the world so that they can all be affected by the brightest reality possible. Uni bless.